Hello and welcome to Edukemy's YouTube channel. My name is Harsh Singh and in this video we will discuss the Gazette of 23rd August 2021. So the hot selling articles in the market today are 1. Niti Aayog's attempt to include certain fuel and electricity in the GST ambit. The second one is on Lancet Report, which says that extreme heat is causing harm to health. So we'll understand the crux of this report. And the third one is RBI revising the locker rules, locker in the bank's rules. These are the three snapshots. This day in history we have dedicated to Manrega. We'll understand why. Featured news, which is on a different video. So we will have two videos. First one on featured news and second one on the rest of the articles. So this time's future news is on vehicle scrappage policy. Just like we recycle water and all other entities, why not recycle vehicles? So in this featured news, we will understand what is the whole ecosystem of vehicle scrappage. When a vehicle is scrapped, how will it proceed in the circular economy ecosystem? We will also understand the advantages of this system and also the challenges associated. Image of the day is of Sri Veerbhadra Swami Temple located in Lepakshi in Andhra Pradesh. Terms of the day. The terms of the day discussed are 1. Surangam system of canals, Prime Global Cities Index and India's ranking. The third one is nuclear fusion breakthrough happening. And the fourth one is India's largest floating solar power plant. Editorials of the day. Today we have some interesting editorials for you. The first one is on digital divide, which has been segregated through gender discrimination. We'll understand how. The second one is on judicial feudalism that relates to the lower courts, the so-called lower courts, and the discrimination meted out to them by the higher courts. And the third one is on real estate, a bid to be included in industry status. We'll understand what are the advantages. Case study of the day is on Manrega GST scheme from Madhya Pradesh. We have dedicated this day in history to Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, because it was on this day, August 23rd, 17 years back, that this act was passed in the Lok Sabha. Now, the important two mandates of this act are 1. To provide minimum 100 days of paid employment to whom? To an unskilled manual worker, right? So these are two important mandates. Also, the main agenda is to create sustainable infrastructure in the rural countryside. Snapshot 1 is on a bid by Niti Aayog to ensure that fuel like petrol and diesel, electricity, they are taxed, they are brought under GST regime. Presently, the states separately tax these fuel and electricity. Now, Niti Aayog has proposed this because the constitution mandates, the constitution says that under Article 279A, the government has to propose a date by which these excluded products will be included as a part of goods and services tax. So, the Niti Aayog has come up with a formula for the same. Now, here the states will be losing some power to tax, right? And therefore, the central government will have to incentivize the states. Therefore, the present tax structure in which the tax is distributed 6:4, that will decrease. The center will give some amount of taxation from its own end, right? There are certain advantages of including petroleum and electricity taxation under GST, and there are certain disadvantages also. For example, GST is itself a value added tax, VAT. That means the taxation will be only on the value addition of the product. For example, if these are potatoes, this is product level 1. If they create potato chips out of it, this is product level 2. And third, if they add extra salt to it, so product level 3. If this is a separate product, this is a separate product, and P3 are separate products, they all will be taxed by the government, right? Because they are being produced. However, the taxation will not be on the complete product at the second level. When potato is taxed, it will be taxed completely. However, when it is being converted into potato chips, only the value addition point will be added in tax. The taxation which was already taken here will not be added in the taxation at this level. And similarly, the taxation after adding salt, that complete taxation will not include the taxation at first and second level. So this will avoid the cascading of tax. What is the net result of this? If we are decreasing the net amount of tax, it is good. It is good for the producer. It is good for the people effectively who are consuming. But is it good for the government? No, it is not good for the government. Why? Because government's net revenue will decrease. States' net revenue will decrease. Therefore, when we put items under GST, it is possible that the net revenue incurred by the state government, by the central government, that will decrease. And this is why the central government will give some amount of incentive to the state. So this is one point, good for the consumers, but bad for the government. So therefore, the government will be providing input tax credit to the entities, to the private organizations. This is one. The second one is post-tax profitability. Post-tax profitability for these organizations, for these producers, that will increase, right? So these are two advantages. However, as we just understood that net taxation for the government will decrease, this is being covered under the revenue neutral rate. Revenue neutral rate. So this is a technical term that we need to understand right now. Now, as the name itself suggests, the idea of the government is to ensure that the revenue which has been taken in by the government, it remains neutral. So how will the government do it? The government will have to increase the taxation rate here. This is how the government will ensure that the revenue remains same. Now, the government had proposed the rate of 12% for R&R. That is revenue neutral rate, but it was too less, because in that amount the government would not have been able to capture a decent amount of revenue. So a committee proposed 27% of revenue. This was too high to ensure that inflation would happen for the people of the nation. And therefore later a standard rate, which is followed by the governments world over, 16%, that has also been proposed by certain bodies. So let us see what R&R will be there. So technical word here is revenue neutral rate, right? Impact of compensation initially for the states will be good, but since they will get habituated to it, the central government will actually want to withdraw it with time, because the central government cannot give them regular incentives like this, and therefore there will be a revenue shock for these state governments maybe in 5 to 6 years of time. And also one important issue you can always mention in GST inclusion of these products is that the states will lose their fiscal autonomy. So this will be a federal which will be pulled towards the central government. So this is the update from snapshot 1. The second snapshot is on an important report by Lancet Journal. It talks about extreme heat which is causing harm to human health. Whenever we go outside in summer times in our environments and the temperature says 35 degrees Celsius, this is something that human health can actually tolerate easily. However, the amount of heat that we feel is far more than this. Why is this so? We feel that the temperature could be more than 42, 43 degrees Celsius. This is so because there is a difference between the actual heat and the feels like heat, right? So the actual temperature and feels like temperature, these are two different concepts. Why does it feel like more heat during those times? It feels like that because there is excessive humidity at that place, or there is very, very low wind speed, hardly 1 to 2 km/h wind speed at that place. Similarly, the opposite of it, during cold times, sometimes the temperature said is 8 degrees Celsius. However, we feel that it is sub-zero. It is so because there is high wind speed. So these are the kind of entities which change the actual feel of the temperature. And this is where this report says that there are two ways in which this can be handled. One, mitigation, and the second one is management, right? So in case we are able to mitigate climate change, we will not have such kind of rise in temperature. And if we cannot handle this properly, we will have to adopt to this climate change and adapt to the same as well, right? So these are the two mechanisms. Now, in case we are not able to adapt to such kind of climate change, then it will result into severe issues in human health. The first is life-threatening issues. Now, our body functions when the temperature of the body is optimal, and that is why the body contains 70% of water, because water not only transports the different minerals to various parts, it also regulates the temperature of the body. It ensures that extra heat is absorbed in the water itself, because water has got highest latent heat capacity. However, it also is at the margin, right? If the temperature of the surrounding is more, and therefore the body temperature rises, right, we catch fever. And the most important agenda is to reduce the body temperature. If we do not reduce it, it can lead to fatigue, it can lead to heat strokes, right? Important body functions will stop. Hormone secretion will also stop in that case. So this is one. The Lancet Journal also says that there will be increased out-of-pocket expenditure and hospitalization in case of such issues. This will lead to less work productivity. Even students, we all face that during summer's time, our brain does not want to work well just because of increased temperatures and the feels like temperature at that particular place, right? The forecast is also not very good. It is ominous because the climate change is going to aggravate the particular situation. And where do we see this kind of issues? We will see them in agriculture, in construction activities. We will see the maximum impacted as older people, the young people, the people who are working outside homes. So this is what the report also has said. How to avoid this? How to avoid this? Report says that we have to stay hydrated so that the water is able to regulate the temperature. Then we have to stay in cooler places. Also, the government has introduced certain norms. For example, green building norms. Right? So this can help in reduction of the home temperatures. Also, National Cooling Action Plan to reduce the amount of coolant that we use, to ensure that we have green kind of environment surrounding the whole ecology setup. So this is where you can also introduce these kind of plans to mitigate climate change. Snapshot 3, in our RBI revising the locker guidelines for the individual banks. Now, these lockers are placed in individual banks where we can hire these lockers of different sizes, small, medium, large, and the bank asks us to pay a rent, an annual rent for the same, right? So what do we deposit here? We deposit our valuables, for example, gold, for example, cash, some important papers, right? So this is where there are certain liability constraints. For example, if the bank is looted, what happens? Who pays for the amount of cash that has been withdrawn from personal accounts, from these lockers? Example, if there is flooding scenario, if there is a natural catastrophe like earthquake and somebody loots the bank later, who is responsible? Who has to pay this amount? This is where these guidelines come into existence. So the RBI says that the banks are non-liable in case there is catastrophe and there is loss in these particular lockers. So in case of acts of gods like earthquake, flood, lightning, etc., they are not liable. However, they will ensure that they will maintain a safe premises for people to keep their valuables in. They will be liable in case there is fire, theft, burglary, right? Incidences like robbery, dacoity or fraud, but that amount will be maximum 100 times of the 1 year rent. So it says 100 times of the prevailing annual rent. So this is the only condition. So usually the charge of rent in PSU banks for a year is around 2 to 3 to 4,000 rupees. And for private banks, it can get multiplied by 2 to 3 times. So the annual rent for private banks could be 8 to 10,000 rupees. However, for PSU banks, it is less. And this is where the RBI says that there must be transparency in allotment of these lockers. So because all the time these PSU lockers are booked and they are not available, so the government has to ensure that there be a repository. There's a repository of how many lockers are available and how many are not available, right? So systematic waiting list will be also generated, right? This is one important thing that RBI has said. It also has said that people will not keep hazardous substances in their lockers or the illegal substances in the lockers. Also, if suppose somebody has not paid the rent for years, so in that case the bank will have the onus. They can actually break open the particular locker. The banks will also take long-term deposits from those people who are not able to pay rent. They will take the rent in advance itself. So these are some updates regarding the locker norms from the RBI. Image of the day is from Sri Veerbhadra Swami temple. This temple is located in a very popular place called as Lepakshi, known as Lepakshi temple. The actual name of the temple is Sri Veerbhadra Swami temple, and this temple is dedicated to one of the ferocious versions of Lord Shiva, and this was constructed during the times of Vijayanagar kingdom in 1533 AD. Also, it is in a race to bid for UNESCO World Heritage Site. Important to note is that there are important paintings, the wall paintings you can see on the image here, and this is why this temple gains popularity. In this image, you can see why this temple wants to bid for UNESCO World Heritage Site. You can see a lot of different architectural marvels. This Nandi bull, the architecture, the way it has been built, that is why it is in a bid for UNESCO World Heritage Site. We also know that important sites of Ajanta and Ellora are in UNESCO World Heritage Site because of certain kind of structures and this kind of mural paintings. First term in news is the Surangam system. What is a Surangam system? It is, as the name suggests, a surang. So this is a tunnel which transports water from the water surplus region to a water deprived region. Now this is the tunnel which has been dug, and this is water surplus which has been deposited out of rain, right? So we see hard rock layer, and above that lot of water, and these tunnels, they actually transport water from one place to another. Why is it in news? It is in news because these surangams are also called as carriage system in Afghanistan, and therefore in Afghanistan they are more vulnerable because there is no maintenance happening of this, and the whole ecosystem of water transportation will fail. This system is also called as Qanat in the Persian, in the Iran-Iraq region, right? You can very well see the surangam system here, right? Transportation of water through these underground channels. Also, you can very well see water can be transported to longer distances through this system, and whenever this water surges again, you see a whole ecosystem where there are forests, where there is life, where there are people living. So this is how it helps. The surangam system helps in a whole new ecosystem at another place. Surangam, Karez, Qanat. Second term in news is the Prime Global Cities Index. This is the index that rates cities on the basis of the exquisite properties in the city. So exquisite residential properties, say top 5% of the properties, if the rates have increased or decreased, this is where the parameter rates the cities. So it rates around 45 important cities, which also includes Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, and the news is that the ranking of Delhi, Mumbai and Bangalore has dropped as compared to the other cities. That means the rise in the property asset, the prime property asset in these cities has not been as much as it is globally. Also, globally the price has risen. The price of these kind of extremely lavish properties has risen. Why has it risen? Two important reasons. One, there is a rise in the prices because of the appetite for residential properties, right? Because of stay-at-home economy. So people are purchasing the luxury homes. This is one. Second, also the interest rates have lowered. So this is why you see a huge jump in properties in Toronto. Since last 1 year, 27% jump. Shanghai, Guangzhou, Seoul, all these cities 20%. Only Bangkok sees -6%. So this gives you an idea of the prices in these properties. In this graph, you can very well clearly see that during the times of 2008-9 crisis, these were the prices of real estate. But after these fluctuations, you see again a small drop because of the COVID situation. The third term in news relates to nuclear fusion and the breakthrough in this technology. It has been found at California Research Lab that if the precision rays are passed with a particular design on the pellets, these two pellets, deuterium and tritium, there is more energy released as compared to previous ones. Why? Because of these two reasons: precision, laser, and this particular design. Now the better part about nuclear fusion reaction is that it leads to lot of energy creation, and this is cleaner. This is produced in a more cleaner way than other ways. So this is one advantage. The second advantage is that nuclear fusion is actually one of the inexhaustible sources of energy, because sun also produces energy through nuclear fusion process. Similarly, if we start to produce energy in that way, we will have bundles and bundles of energy, right? So this is the radioactive waste also is not present in the atmosphere for a long time, and it has no or almost less CO2 emission. So this is about it. Now, important to understand is that deuterium and tritium, these are isotopes. These are isotopes of hydrogen. Isotopes mean they will have a different mass, but the atomic number will be same. Iso means same. Tope means position in the periodic table. So position of hydrogen, deuterium and tritium remain same. However, deuterium has one extra neutron and tritium has two extra neutrons. So this is the prime difference. They were utilized to create this energy, right? The fourth term and concept in news is India's largest floating solar power plant. It is in news because it has been laid over the Visakhapatnam area, and this is 25 megawatt power plant. Now, there are many advantages of putting it in on water. One advantage is that we don't have to have the land area. So land will not have to be diverted from agriculture or from forest use. The water can itself be utilized. The second advantage is that water here will not get evaporated because it is covered by this solar panels. The third advantage is that there will be lesser cost for maintenance of the same place. Now, this has been put in plan under government's 2018 flexibilization scheme. This is where the government said that the power producers must diversify their production mechanisms. So to include the renewable energy, to ensure that transportation of fuel is decreased so that there is less expenditure on transportation. And third, to ensure that these newer kind of mechanisms also be purchased. So power purchase agreements also, right? Now in Tamil Nadu itself, in Chennai, we will have 100 megawatt solar power plant, floating power plant. Also, Odisha government has said that it will have all its water bodies covered with solar photovoltaic plants, and it could be to the tune of 500 megawatt. So this is how the government is trying to ensure that these solar power plants be introduced on the water bodies as well. The first editorial of the day is on the gender divide and digital divide included together. So let us quickly discuss this editorial. The article starts by saying that the organizations and society has evolved itself and it has adopted the digital technology to the tune of increasing it 5-fold by the year 2025. It says that there has been a 5% increase in the telehealth consultation, 500% increase. There has been 95% districts which have accepted the e-retail mechanism of commerce, right? Also, the financial transactions per day have reached 100 million per day. So we see an increased adoption to technology. However, there is a digital divide. Why? Because mobile ownership, one, and the usage of internet, these are two big hurdles, and especially with respect to rural areas, especially with respect to females, and also inside the home itself, intra-family disparities. This is what the article gets into. It says that South Asia, despite being one place where growth is maximum, it is the widest mobile gender gap globally. In the image, you can very well see that countries like China, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Japan, the usage of the mobiles and internet is very high in these countries. But what when it comes to India and Pakistan, you can hardly see any usage in these countries. So these graphs ought to reach the levels of Thailand and China. Also, in the next image, you see the mobile owners and mobile internet usage. India falls just around Bangladesh and Pakistan in both of them. And there is a high disparity in usage of internet amongst the males and females. The article says that this is the situation of triple disadvantage to females. Those females who are in the rural areas as compared to urban areas, first. Second, income based, that means those who earn less as compared to the ones who earn more. And the third one is the ones who face discrimination inside their own houses. Now, it has been seen in innumerable reports. The article says that the male child is also given more supremacy over usage of a smartphone and usage of internet, right? And what are the reasons given? The reasons given are, if the girl is not married, it is about her reputation. She should not use mobile phones and internet, especially in public, and post-marriage, she is not giving adequate care to children. So that is why she must put herself in these responsibilities rather than operating mobile phone. This is what the article in ORF also mentions, right? Now, we very well know that online schools, skilling, workforce, healthcare, this is all getting operated these times in online ways. One very simple example is a lot of teaching material has been passed by schools on WhatsApp. Also, I had gone for my own COVID vaccination when I saw elderly females. They didn't know how to operate this smartphone and they were helpless to get themselves vaccinated. So in these situations, what has to be done? We have to understand that women workforce is being put out of this kind of digital mechanism. There is a huge digital divide, especially in this triple disadvantage scenario. Right? This is where the article suggests there are very, very good means also active in India. Digital Didi. So these are the females who are trying to train the other females to learn how to use smartphones, to learn how to use internet. Second, mobile library. There are places where mobile phones are being given on rent so that people can learn how to use mobile and give it back. Community-based organizations are being used. Now, we do have village resource centers, we do have common service centers, but these are places for computers. What about mobile phones? Right? So this is where digital DDs, these examples can be used while you write good answers, right? The main idea here, the article says, is to give easy access. This is one. Second, digital literacy. So one program which is working in this field is Prime Minister Gramin Digital Saksharta Abhiyan, and the third one is connectivity. And this is where I would like to bring to your notice, we have covered BharatNet connectivity under one of the feature articles. So you search BharatNet Edukemy on YouTube, you will find a feature article, a complete 15-minute article on the same, right? So this is where we talk of how the digital India is being executed, right? So there are three important components in it. One is about infrastructure, the second one is digital literacy, and the third one is of government schemes. This is how digital India is getting prospered, and we see digital literacy and the infrastructure, two components here as well recommended. The second editorial is on the differences between the lower courts and the High Court and the Supreme Court. So this kind of feudalism must end. This is what the article mentions. The Constitution itself mentions the word subordinate courts. The Constitution itself mentions under Article 235 about controlling the lower courts. It talks about inferior to the lower courts and judges being inferior to the one of the higher courts. So these are the kind of words the article says are derogatory to the lower courts. And this is where Himachal High Court has said that all the courts which are not at the level of the High Court, they will be called as trial courts. They will not be called as lower courts. So this is how the dignity of a judge in their own jurisdiction is maintained, right? Although there is a hierarchy of jurisdiction, there is a provision of review and revisory jurisdiction in which High Court will revise its own jurisdiction, or it can take the judgment passed by the lower courts. But it does not mean that the judge in their own capacity in the lower court, they were inferior. So this is the point that this article is making. Himachal High Court has already taken a step in the same process by calling all the courts as trial courts, right? Now, the Constitution talks of independence of judiciary, but this is where we see there is no independence, because we talk of control over, we talk of inferiority. The article also gives an important suggestion. It says that while during the promotions of these judges of these lower courts, so-called trial courts, while during by the time we are giving annual confidential reports, that means their performance report, there must be accountability of the higher courts. It must not be random and arbitrary. And this is how we will respect all the judges and the authority of the jurisdiction of these trial courts, that means lower courts. The third editorial talks about real estate. Real estate being an important ingredient to make India reach $5 trillion economy. The article says that important reforms have been introduced in the form of Real Estate Regulatory Authority, Model Tenancy Act. We have studied that in June 3 feature article, and then Prime Minister Awas Yojana, urban affordable housing for all schemes, right? And this is where the industry status, this can lead to a lot of development in real estate sector. How? It will generate employment, it will generate a forward and backward linkage with industries. So construction industries, real estate industries, growth in urban areas, all this will be linked. It will also give housing to all, right? So this last mile funding is very important also because there is a very low NPA, hardly 2% in this sector. What is required is to ensure ease of doing business. So electricity connections, water, approach road, the clearances by the Regional Development Authority of the plan, right? Environmental clearances, these have to be hastened, these have to be made fast. Digitization of records, digitization of acquisition, floor space index clearance plans. So these have to be made fast. So these are certain recommendations. It says that compliance should not be treated as burden, but important part of the process. If the buildings, if the real estate in urban areas are made sustainable, for example, rainwater harvesting, for example, energy through clean mechanisms, green building norms, people, the customers, they will become a part as the stakeholders itself. So this is the vision that the editorial gives. Case study of the day is an important case study for water rejuvenation in an area. This is from Barmani village in Sindh district in Madhya Pradesh. Now here, people had started to migrate to urban areas, especially the male members. Also, there was decreased amount of water conservation facilities in the village. There were few dug wells, and this is where the important role of Manrega schemes comes into play. The Manrega scheme says 75% of the work should be carried out for water conservation, and they continued with it. They ensured that check dams be established. They ensured that contour trenches be established. Contour trenches are trenches. These are holes dug up at several heights. So in case this is a sliding area, the slope, so these are the trenches where these are the places where some holes are dug and water gets conserved here. So water conservation started to happen. Table also did rise because of this. later a lot of people started to migrate back to the village because now agriculture was a productive activity. Also, this village later became a food surplus village. Not only that, the water table rose to 10 feet, just 10 feet below the ground. There were increased vegetable production. In fact, almost every home in the village owned this vegetable farm. And this is how we see how sticking to Manrega plans, right, how sticking to water as an important generator of growth can lead to a complete change in the ecosystem of a village. If you like this video, shower some love on us through likes, comments and shares. If you subscribe to the channel, you will receive timely updates. Thanks for watching.